So here I go. This will be chapter 12 of the story. If you're interested, I just go back to past broadcasts, and you'll be able to take a look. And I've also saved the highlights. The highlights are the full time, minus a few edits and my palm going to the camera. Yeah. Don't ask my camera. Don't ask my setup. My setup is janky. I'm not professional. I'm just reading. Someday I'll probably get something a little more fancy if I start really, really dedicating. Right now I'm a hobby twitcher. I don't know how that goes. Anyway, without further ado, I present you chapter 12. Chapter 12 being Winter Quarters. They took a step into the hidden ways, into a place where winds swept across a barren sandy plain. Just to their right lay the skeleton of a fish, dry and white in the pale sun. The skull of the fish was huge, so huge, Thockel estimated it to be twice his height from the bottom of the jaw to the top of the skull. They stepped once more, and now they were in a vaguely familiar territory. Ah, here we are. Where are we then? Ah, my doubtful ox driver. Look on the ground. There, to your left. Stage left. There, tossed aside into the grass, was his ox goad. You brought me here for this? Yes, indeed. It's not a thing you need desperately, but it seemed right that we should recover it for you. Now pick it up. We have other places to be. Thockel picked up the goad, realizing that his sense of familiarity was right. This had been the place where Dalthorio's forces had been camped, and the absence of soldiers and tents, and all. Her servant ushered a sweaty and urgent scout into Lucy's presence. What now? Narnesh is advancing with 4 times the force we expected? Lady, there's 2 people coming up over the road. One is a little short one, knee-high to a grasshopper. The other is the ox driver, Thockel. Thockel? But he's a prisoner of Narnesh. He says the little fellow got him loosed yesterday. But of course he's making that up. It'd take a week or so to travel from Narnesh's camp to here. How far out are they? They'll be in by evening. Duty officers rousted out a small patrol to escort them in. Well done. She pulled out 2 coppers. Here, take these with my gratitude. Early that evening, servants escorted Thockel and the little man into Lucy's tent. Welcome back, Thockel. We were afraid you were lost to us. Indeed I was, lady, but my friend here, Shepakalish, freed me. She looked at the little man. Well, my thanks to you too, Shepakalish. What is your trade? I, lady? A mere merchant, a peddler, a traveler with gewgaws of this sort and that in my packs. It almost seemed for a moment that he was going to begin a spiel and offer her a great bargain, but instead he went on. I met Thockel at another time and place, and there was that about him that required me to give him assistance when the such was needed. I therefore came to his aid and brought him from the prison of Narnesh away from the clutches of Dr. Gobnash. She looked at him a moment longer, then said, You too have made my quandary more difficult. Dalthorio has taken a substantial portion of my army with him. Lacking both troops and the talisman, my choices were between a last desperate attack on Narnesh and surrender. Now, however, we must assess whether the recovery of the talisman can make up for the lack of troops. Thockel bowed. My lady, having experienced the hospitality of Narnesh, I can say that I will not surrender to him. You may do what you may. Oh dear. You may do what you feel you must for you and yours, but I will not be put in his hands again. And if the battle is hopeless, then I will die. Or perhaps I will flee far, far and fast, but I will not be Narnish's prisoner again. So it seems it would do me no good to surrender then. Narnish's first demand is sure to be that I hand you over to him. You seriously considered surrender? If it might save my people the least part of his revenge, yes. And you'd trust any promises he made? What choice would I have? Another bloody battle with more men dead, and at the end of it, the great likelihood that Narnish would be free to do as he wished? Thakkel opened his mouth to speak, then stopped, frowning. At last he said, "A crown is a heavy burden. I can afford to consider only my own welfare. The queen must think of so much else. Yes, and I must think of matters such as getting the farmers back to their lands as well. El Coriad has convinced me that we must keep the bulk of our army together until Narnish is gone into winter quarters. The numbers are such that he might choose to make his own unexpected attack. But all this is tough for meetings. We will be meeting this evening, Thakkel, and I would appreciate your presence." The meeting on Lucy's tent that evening was a vigorous one. There was a surrender now and hope for mercy group, the attack immediately, catch Narnish unawares and destroy him with the Talisman group, and in the middle, let us see to our lands and herds and farms and come back freshly prepared next year group. Much heated talk took place. Few minds, or none at all, were changed, but all of those standing to insist on being heard or were heard. At length, Lucy held up a hand for silence and looked around. One person we have not yet heard from. One person who has a great stake here. Thakkel, what do you have to say? Thakkel stood and looked around. There were people there, he knew, who would have protested his presence, let alone his right to speak. That attitude was too closely tied to Del Thorio, and no one wished to put himself in that camp. It was one thing to advocate surrender. It was another to negotiate a private surrender and leave erstwhile companions in the lurch. My contribution to this discussion will be brief. I doubt there is one here who does not know that I was, just lately, a prisoner of Narnish for some days. I tell you, for what it may be worth, I have no intention of falling into his hands again. And further, if the decision from this body is to fight, then I shall fight. If your decision is to surrender and hope for mercy, I know the kind of mercy available at Narnish's court. I will not surrender. Which set several spokesmen from each of the groups shouting at once. This went on for a short time. Then Lucy rose and began rapping on the table with a dagger pommel. It took a little time, but even the most vocal of those present realized the lady was standing. I thank you all for your contribution to the discussion. There are things to be said for and against each possible decision. But in taking these all into account, I find one of them to be best. We will begin to send home those who are needed at farm and homestead and herd, beginning with those who must travel the furthest. Our scouts will keep track of Narnish to see to it that we are apprised of every move he makes. Narnish was badly battled. Hold on, let's try that again. Narnish was badly battered in the recent battle. It reads better than it speaks. But to assume that he will not take the field again this year is to take a serious risk. Next season we shall march once more, and having learned from the recent events of this year, we will do better. Think also of this. Throughout the year, men will be going back to Wentz, telling the tales of the battle and the dread Talisman, so that next year the new men, and many of the old, will be beaten before they take the field. That is all. The sickleman had his men called together. Soldiers, you have followed me well and steady into the situation that you had not imagined at the time when we left our home. There are many of you who have families left families back in Wentz, families, farms, and lands which you need your care. To those in such case, I say report your status to your commanders, and I shall see to it that you are sent home, without prejudice or hindrance. Only be aware when you have gone home, for if it becomes known you followed me here and fought behind me, Narnish and his bootlickers may not forgive you. For those of you without family ties on you, I ask that you stay with me in this, our new place. When matters here have been properly settled, I will see to it that you are rewarded. As he stepped down, leaving his commanders to dismiss their men, Tagashan said softly, "You'll find more than a few making claims of family affairs just to be able to go home. If so, don't you think we'll do better without them? At what point, then, will we cease to be an effective fighting force and become merely an expanded honor guard for you?" The sickleman smiled his small, grim smile. "You speak bluntly, don't you? Well, I have already had a thought or two in that direction. When the commanders have the lists of men wishing to go home, have them pick some dozen or so steady and reliable men from those. Have them brought to me before they leave." He had expected Delphi, as with most boys, would lose interest in time. But every morning the boy came trotting up the trail, eager to learn something new. Some parts of the soldiering trade interested him less than others. The necessity of latrine trenches, for instance, was not something that caught his imagination. The sickleman suspected the reason for that was Delphi didn't have the build or stature to handle a man-sized shovel, which would make his attempts at digging unsatisfactory. Troop maneuvers, however, and all the reasons for any evolution of troops on parade ground or battlefield continued to fascinate him. The men took to him and referred to him as the Little Commander, with no mockery intended. Once in a while, he could come bearing something special from my ma, a fresh load of bread, half a dozen eggs, a fresh cheese, or the like. The boy handed these over as though they were nothing special. The sickleman wondered if she was sending him as some sort of payment, though he'd never spoken of payment. Indeed, he hadn't thought of it as a matter for payment. He tried to think, now and then, of a way to politely let her know these gifts were not needed. But recalling his interview with her, he always held back. How did he refuse without seeming discourteous? Which reminded him, he had to go visit her for supper sometime. He passed the word through Delphi that he would be happy to come dine whenever it might be convenient, adding a note that, while he appreciated the gifts she'd sent him, he regretted he had nothing worthwhile to send her in return. The boy came back the next day with a piece of paper bearing a suggested date. 2 days later, and a little note at the end assuring him that keeping her son occupied and out of trouble was gift enough. He could almost see her smiling as she wrote that. El Coriat looked at the wood chip Lusomi had handed him and read the phrases of the common language, done by someone from Wentz, it seemed, with idiosyncratic spelling. Narnash goes whom, he read. Hess force is badly battered and not fit to fight again this year. His cavalry in particular is sorely stricken. I will watch and send you further word. And no signature. None? She looked up at him. While all around there are noises of an army preparing to march. It was sent by a villager who had claimed it was given to him late at night by someone he didn't see, who made threats against himself and his family if it wasn't brought to me. It doesn't tell much beyond what spies and scouts have already reported. I'm loath to dismiss it, but it could merely be a plan to make me believe these things he says, until a day when he can send a message to seriously mislead me. Unlikely. Narnish shows that you have scouts and spies and have to assess the various reports they make. If one report varies so much from the others, most likely we would discount it completely. What concerns me is that he asks no money. A person doesn't hang around taking the risk of spying on Narnish, all for nothing but a good feeling. That had occurred to me as well. Perhaps he sends us for free. He sends us this for free, and after he sent another 2 or 3, we have some faith in his reports, he will send a request for a small bag of silver. Well, we will watch what he sends us, and if it continues to support what we know from other sources, we will use it. The Lady Junomi Hestelcad had wine poured for herself and Lucy, and the other 2 of them sat in Junomi's kitchen, chatting about various things. Then Lucy got down to business. Lord de Sickelman and his army, they haven't been a great deal of trouble to you? No, not much. Occasionally one of his younger men gets too full of wine and notions of Went's superiority, and he makes himself a nuisance. Lord de Sickelman takes care of that, issuing punishments and apologies, and if the case is serious, paying a fine. To be honest, on occasion, one of our own young hotheads hear Wentz and think enemy will cause trouble, usually beating some half-drunk soldier. In that case, I see to it that punishments and apologies are made, and occasionally a fine. I must admit, though, that my lands cannot continue to support them indefinitely. We have fertile and productive lands, but not infinitely so. You wish to be rid of him? Oh, not immediately. There will come a time, though, when supporting our own people, along with a small army, will be too much. Lucy frowned and thought. I see. I had hoped to leave him here until such a time as I can find lands to give him for a reward. I wouldn't burden you excessively, though. Suppose I made contributions towards his upkeep until that time. Lady Junomi fiddled with her wine cup. Lady, that would be most helpful. Might I ask, though, that the contributions be in kind rather than coin? With armies that have been in these territories, the land is so picked over that even gold is unlikely to buy extra sheep. Well, Shapakalish, will you be on your way soon? What sort of treatment is this? Shapakalish, come rescue me, clean me up, deliver me home, and now, please be gone, and don't hang around. You fear your ox driver status will suffer from having a mere merchant in your vicinity? Thakal grinned at him. Now, if I thought you really felt yourself to be aggrieved, I would apologize. But as you very well know, you were on your way from somewhere to somewhere when I called you. I didn't want you to miss your appointment. Ah, but I'm not one to be sent here and sent there, carrying my goods only to certain markets. I am a free merchant, free to go where I will, and if I make a few coppers more here or less there, so be it. And if I have a mind to go to the old city of Ascos, why, there I will go. And if I choose to not to breathe the dust and other fascinating scents at the tail of the army, then I'll have other ways to travel which are less crowded. Thoggle chuckled. And I'm afraid that Lady Lucy will not let me out of her sight again, so I must travel with the army. Not at the tail, mind you, but with the army. The little man raised his eyebrows. She will not let you out of her sight? Is this a romance I smell a brewing? Thoggle snorted with laughter. An ox driver and the Queen of Ascos? Not hardly. It's only that she has great concern for the weapon which may help her win freedom from bloody Narnish. Shepherd Kalish put on a mournful face. Oh, no romance, eh? So sad. I'm something of a scholar of the tales of romance, you see. It would be fascinating to be here at the beginning, to watch the development of a tale. Oh well. How many subjects are you a student of? Philosophy, ancient epics, and now romance? Shepherd Kalish grinned. I'm sure you would be surprised to know the subjects of which I am a student. I am sure we will see each other from time to time around the old city, and we shall have time and opportunity to discuss philosophy once more. And that was a shorter one tonight. Much shorter. So, once again, if you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, I will be signing off soon. Yeah. One of the other things I found, which I'll probably read at the end, but this, which is the synopsis for the whole entire story. Yeah, I read it a while ago and I totally forgot about it. I put it down in a pile somewhere and I just pulled it up last night and I thought it was kind of interesting. It's a synopsis that would have been sent off with query letters when querying to publishers and whatnot, because my father wanted to be traditionally published. That's not happening now because I'm choosing to self-publish, although small press publish his book. Self-publishing infers that I'm the only one, but I'll be, independently publishing it. How about that? Anyway, so without further ado, I will talk to you again tomorrow. And have a good night. And I'll bring chapter 13 tomorrow. So